Oh, this is the wrong screen. Shush, you know that thing. Hello and welcome. This is Brandy Rosesmith, live in the Bin Library, and today it is Sherlock Holmes time. Why? Why? Because I don't know. I just wanted to. Salutations! Hello, everyone. Oh boy, I love Sherlock Holmes. I hope we get to see one of Watson's classic ejaculations in this story. Yeah. This is one of the things I love about language. I love when language is so weird and out of context when it's written in the past because it had a completely different name back then, or a completely different meaning back then. It's lovely. Good evening, Red Candy Guy. Hi, Native Gamer. Hi, Luke. Hi, Jump Hi, Noko-chan. Yeah, I do get it. I do. It's funny. Hi, Bryony. I had a lovely day yesterday. Went to see a really nice documentary on life in Australia. Lovely. Hope it wasn't too terrifying if it was about life in Australia, because all nature is out to kill you over there, from what I've heard. You have to check your shoes before you put them on so there's not a deadly spider inside. It's terrifying. Australians are strong people. I am good! Look, I'm good. How are you? Happy to be here. Ads! Sorry about that, bro. They exist. Because the last book had catgirls' pheromones, was hard to read and frustrating. Briny is the honest answer. I mean, that's not the entirely honest answer. I could have picked a different book. The last book, yeah, I didn't vibe with it. I didn't enjoy reading it. And if I'm not enjoying reading it, then I don't, it's not going to be a fun stream for anyone, really. I kind of got to put out the good vibes. And if I don't feel like I have the good vibes, then I don't want to do it. So the honest answer is, I couldn't find a book for this stream, or I just didn't. There's a couple of authors I'm talking to, but I have to wait for responses and things like that. So classics it is. That's the real answer, Void. But I'm kind of distracted, I'm not gonna lie. So we just went to my parents, because you see, Doctor Who started again, and to watch it in England, you have to watch it on the BBC. Sherlock Holmes is a fallback book, 100% great fallback book. But if to watch the BBC, you have to have a TV license. But we didn't have a TV license, so I went to my parents to watch all of the Doctor Who episodes that came out. And now I am completely distracted. They were great episodes. I think if you're across the pond international, you can watch it on Disney Plus. So good. Oh, Brandy, I had a question. I was wondering about, if I found a counterfeit Moon Girl book, should I tell you about it? Why would there be counterfeit Moon Girl books? A TV license, yes. So in England, we have a thing called a TV license. It's not a license for having a TV. Basically, it's like, it pays for the BBC. So it's basically kind of how they get their funding. And you have to have a TV license if you want to watch BBC Live TV or iPlayer, and they keep extending it to try get money out of you, but it's mostly just for BBC. Like, it's not for specifically having a TV. If you just watch YouTube, Netflix, which is what we normally do, streaming services, you're fine. But basically anything to do with the BBC, you gotta pay for it. Do you have a license to VTube? No, don't tell them. I don't have a license to VTube. I can't get fined for that right now. No, I don't. Couldn't you skirt around the license with a VPN, or will they find you anyways? It's just best not. I probably could if I wanted to, but that's like a lot. There's a lot of effort, whereas I could just go around and be like, hey mom, dad, I'm stealing your TV for a while, because they have catch-up and Sky and whatnot, whereas we haven't had Sky in a very long time, so we haven't bothered. But I did watch it. So good. I very much enjoyed all those episodes, and I could very much easily completely just rail this entire stream and just tell you about all the episodes of Doctor Who. But I'm not going to. We're going to read one of these short stories. Yes, we are. So we read Scandal in Bohemia before. So we're not reading that one. And I thought we started Blue Carbuncle, but I never actually finished it. And I don't remember what happened, so we'd have to restart that one. But that leaves 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 other stories. That's an awkward number. I was hoping to random... No. It leaves 10 because Blue Carbuncle has been done. It leaves 10. That's nice and easy. We can roll that number. That is fine. Let me get the right dice. There's my D10. Let me move my microphone so you can have the dice ASMR. You know, very important. It's 2. Move my mic back up. Okay, 1, 2. Case of Identity. That's what we're going to read today. Case of Identity. My dear fellow, said Sherlock Holmes as we sat on either side of the fireplace in his lodging at Baker Street, life is infinitely stranger than anything which the mind of man could invent. We would not dare to conceive the things which are really mere commonplaces of existence. If we could fly out of that window, hand in hand, hover over this great city, gently remove the rooftops and peep in at the queer things which are going on, the strange coincidences, the plannings, the cross purposes, the wonderful chain of events working through generations and leading to the most outre results. It would make all fiction within its conventionalities and foreseen conclusions most stale and unprofitable. Now that was a monologue to open with, goddamn, said Sherlock after discovering because get off the lawn, you copper branches. Bandlin's Bohemia. And yet I am not convinced of it, I answer. The cases which come to light in the papers are, as a rule, bold enough and vulgar enough. We have our police reports, realism, pushed to its extreme limits, and yet the result is, it must be confessed, neither fascinating nor artistic. A certain selection and discretion must be used in producing a realistic effect, remarked Holmes. This is wanting in the police report, where more stress is laid, perhaps upon the platitudes of the magistrate than upon the details, which to an observer contain the vital essence of the whole matter. Depend on it, there is nothing so unnatural as the commonplace. I smiled and shook my head. I can quite understand your thinking so, I said. Of course, in your position, an unofficial advisor and helper to everybody who is absolutely puzzled, throughout the 3 continents, you are brought in contact with all that is strange and bizarre, but here... I picked up the morning paper from the ground. Let us put it to a practical test. Here is the first heading upon which I come. A husband's cruelty to his wife. There is half a column of print, but I know without reading it that it is all perfectly familiar to me. There is, of course, the other woman, the drink, the push, the blow, the bruise, the sympathetic sister or my landlady. The crudest of writers could invent nothing more crude. No, you! Oi! What's all this niceness? What? What's all this niceness? It's coming from Luke. No shit, Sherlock. He's being too nice. No, you! Indeed, your example is an unfortunate one for your argument, said Holmes, taking the paper and glancing his eye down to it. This is the Dundas separation case, and, as it happens, I was engaged in clearing up some of the small points in connection with it. The husband was a teetotaler. Teetotaler? Wait. Don't be mean. It's only Luke who's not allowed to be nice. There was no other woman, and the conduct complained of was that he had drifted into the habit of winding up every meal by taking out his false teeth and hurling them at his wife, which, you will allow, is not a likely action to occur to the imagination of the average storyteller. Take a pinch of snuff, Doctor, and acknowledge that I have scored over you in your example. He held out his snuff box of old gold, with a great amethyst in the centre of the lid. Its splendour was in such contrast to his homely ways and simple life that I could not help commenting upon it. "Ah," he said, "I forgot that I had not seen you for some weeks. It is a little souvenir from the King of Bohemia, in return for my assistance in the case of the Irene Adler papers." Yay! They reference the one story in this book that I've read. That was a good story, and you should go back to my VODs to watch it. If only because it had my name in it. I didn't even know it had my name in it. Irene Adler lived on Briny Lane, and I'm not even joking. I don't know. It was such a wonderful coinky dinky. I have pawned you now. Cocaine. Yeah, pretty much. That do be how Sherlock rolls. "And the ring?" I asked, glancing at a remarkable brilliant which sparkled upon his finger. "It was from the reigning family of Holland, though the matter in which I served them was of such delicacy I cannot confide it even in you, who have been good enough to chronicle one or two of my little problems." "And have you any on hand just now?" I asked with interest. "Some 10 or 12, but none which present any feature of interest. They are important, you understand, without being interesting. Indeed, I have found that it is unusually that in unimportant matters that there is in this. I have found that it is unusually in unimportant matters that there is a field for the observation, and for the quick analysis of cause and effect, which gives the charm to an investigation. The larger crimes are apt to be simpler, for the bigger the crime, the more obvious, as a rule, in the motive. In these cases, save for one rather intricate matter, which has been referred to me from Marseilles, there is nothing which presents any feature of interest. It is possible, however, that I may have something better before very many minutes are over, for this is one of my clients that I am much mistaken. He had risen from his chair and was standing between the parted blinds, gazing down into the dull, neutral-tinted London street. Looking over his shoulder, I saw that on the pavement opposite there stood a large woman with a heavy fur boa around her neck, and a large curling feather in a broad-brimmed hat, which was tilted in a conquetish Duchess of Devonshire fashion over her ear. From under this great panoply, she peeped up in a nervous, hesitating fashion at our windows, while her body oscillated back and forth, and her fingers fidgeted with her glove buttons. Suddenly, with a plunge, as if the swimmer who leaves the bank, she hurried across the road, and we heard the sharp clang of the bell. "I've seen those symptoms before," said Holmes, throwing up his cigarette into the fire. Oscillation upon the pavement always means an affair de care. Some French that I do not know how to say. She would like advice, but is not sure that the matter is not too delicate for communication. And yet, even here we may discriminate. When a woman has been seriously wronged by a man, she no longer oscillates, and the usual symptoms is a broken bell wire. We may take it that there is no love matter, but that the maiden is not so much angry as perplexed or grieved. But here she comes in person to resolve our doubts. As he spoke, there was a tap at the door, and the boy in buttons entered to announce Miss Mary Sunderland. Sunderland. While the lady herself loomed behind his small black figure, like a full-sailed merchantman behind a tiny pilot boat. Sherlock Holmes welcomed her with the easy courtesy for which he was remarkable, and having closed the door and bowed her into an armchair, he looked her over in the minute, and yet abstracted fashion which was peculiar to him. "Did you not find," he said, "with your short sight, it is a little trying to do so much typewriting?" "I did at first," she answered, "but now I know where the letters are without looking." Then, suddenly realizing the full purport of his words, she gave him a violent start and looked up, with fear and astonishment upon her broad, good-groomed face. "You've heard about me, Mr. Holmes?" she cried. "How else could you know all that?" "Never mind," said Holmes, laughing. "It is my business to know things. Perhaps I have trained myself to see what others overlook. If not, why should you come to consult me?" "I came to you, sir, because I heard of you from Miss Etheridge, whose husband you found so easily when the police and everyone had given him up for dead. Oh, Mr. Holmes, I wish you would do as much for me. I'm not rich, but still, I have a husband a year in my own right, besides the little that I make by the machine, and I would give it all to know what has become of Mr. Hosmer Angel." "Someone die yet? No one's died yet. No one's died yet." "Why did you come away to consult me in such a hurry?" asked Sherlock Holmes, with his fingertips together and his eyes to the ceiling. Again a startled look came over the somewhat voracious face of Miss Mary Sutherland. "Yes, I did bang out of the house," she said, "for it made me angry to see the easy way in which Mr. Windibank, that is my father, took it all. He would not go to the police, and he would not go to you. So at last, as he would do nothing, and kept on saying that there was no harm done, it made me mad, and I just on with my things, and came right to you." "Yet. We don't know if there will be. Sherlock doesn't always investigate murders, so who knows?" "Your father," said Holmes. "Your stepfather, surely, since the name is different." "Yes, my stepfather. I call him father, though. It sounds funny, too, for he is only 5 years and 2 months older than myself." "And your mother is still alive?" "Oh, yes, my mother is alive and well. I wasn't best pleased, Mr. Holmes, when she married again so soon after father's death, and a man who was nearly 15 years younger than herself. Father was a plumber in the Tottenham Court Road, and he left a tidy business behind him, which mother carried on with Mr. Hardy, the foreman. But when Mr. Windibank came, he made her sell the business, for he was very superior, being a traveller in wine. They got 40. I can't imagine how much 4,700 was back in these days. £4,700 for the goodwill and interest, which wasn't near as much as father could have gotten had he been alive. How much is that back then? How much is that back then? So much money, goddamn. I'd expected to see Sherlock Holmes impatient under this rambling and inconsequential narrative, but on the contrary, he had listened with the greatest concentration of attention. Your own little income, he asked. Does it come out of the business? Oh, no, sir. It is quite separate and was left to me by my Uncle Ned in Auckland. It is in New Zealand stock, paying 4.25%. £2,500 was the amount, but I can only touch the interest. You interest me extremely, said Holmes. And since you draw so large a sum as 100 a year, which what you earn into the bargain, do you no doubt travel a little and indulge yourself in every way. I believe that a single lady can get on very nicely upon the income of £60. I could do with much less than that, Mr. Holmes, but you understand that as long as I live at home, I don't wish to be a burden to them. So they have the use of the money while I am staying with them. Of course, that is only for the time. Mr. Windibank draws my interest every quarter and pays it over to mother. And I find that I can do pretty well with what I earn at typewriting. It brings me 2p a sheet, and I can often do from 15 to 20 sheets a day. You have made your position very clear to me, said Mr. Holmes. This is my friend, Dr. Watson, before whom you can speak as freely as before myself. Kindly tell us now all about your connection with Mr. Hosmer Angel. A flush stole over Miss Sunderland's face, and she picked nervously at the fringes of her jacket. I met him first at Gaspister's ball, she said. They used to send father tickets when he was alive, and then afterwards they remembered us and sent them to mother. Mr. Windibank did not wish for us to go. He never did wish for us to go anywhere. He would get quite mad if I wanted to so much as join a Sunday school retreat, but this time I was set on going, and I would go. For what right did he have to prevent? He said the folk were not fit for us to know, when all father's friends were to be there. And he said that I had nothing fit to wear, when I had my purple plush that I had never so much as taken out of the drawer. At last, when nothing else would do, he went off to France upon the business of the firm. But we went, mother and I, with Mr. Hardy, who used to be our foreman, and it was there I met Mr. Hosmer Angel. I suppose, said Holmes, that when Mr. Windibank came back from France, he was very annoyed at you having gone to the ball. Oh, well, he was very good about it. He laughed, I remember, and shrugged his shoulders. He said there was no use in denying anything to a woman, for she would have her way. I see. Then at the Gaspiter's ball you met, as I understand, a gentleman called Mr. Hosmer Angel. Yes, sir. I met him that night, and he called the next day to ask if we had gotten home all safe. And after that we met him. That is to say, Mr. Holmes, I met him twice for walks. But after that, father came back again, and Mr. Hosmer Angel could not come to the house any more. No? Well, you know father didn't like anything of the sort. He wouldn't have any visitors if he could help it, and he used to say that a woman should be happy in her own family circle. But then, as I used to say to Mother, a woman wants her own circle to begin with, and I had not gotten mine yet. But how about Mr. Holmes, my angel? Did he make no attempt to see you? Well, Father was going off to France again in a week, and Hosmer wrote that he said it would be safer and better not to see each other until he had gone. We could write in the meantime, and he used to write every day. I took the letters in the morning, so there was no need for Father to know. Were you engaged to the gentleman at this time? Oh, yes, Mr. Holmes. We were engaged after the first walk that we took. Mr. Angel, was a cashier in an office in Leadenhall Street. And what office? That's the worst of it, Mr. Holmes. I don't know. Where did he live, then? He slept on the premises. And you don't know his address? No, except it was at Leadenhall Street. What was that song from Frozen? Oh, the song is irrelevant. But you don't marry a man you just met. Don't marry a man you just met, you silly lady. Mary, you silly lady. Did at least put the letters in the attic, though? He did not. He's not a witch. At least we don't. I don't think he's a witch. I don't know. To Leadenhall Street Post Office, to be left till called for. He said that if they were sent to the office, he would be chaffed by all the other clerks about having letters from a lady. So I offered to typewrite them, like he did this, but he wouldn't have that. For he said that when I wrote them, they seemed to come from me, but when they were typewritten, he always felt that the machine has come between us. That will just show you how fond he was of me, Mr. Holmes, and the little things that he would think of. Bryony, didn't you fall in love with a dude you just met, though? No. Fictional men don't count. For the record, fictional men don't count. Fictional men and women don't count. It was most suggestive, said Holmes. It has long been an axiom of mine that the little things are indefinitely the most important. Can you remember any other little things about Mr. Hosmer Angel? He was a very shy man, Mr. Holmes. You gonna lurk, Luke? Have a lovely lurk. Chill out, bro. You got this. I got this. He would rather walk with me in the evening than in the daylight, for he said that he hated to be conspicuous. Daddy stopped by too. So if you had a beaner pillow, that'd be perfectly fine. Got it? Yes, that's perfectly fine. It's only in real life that you don't fall in love with people you just met. Get to know them. Well, no, falling in love is a different thing. Cause like, I'd like to believe love at first sight is a thing. However, marrying them when you first meet them, you still need to get to know them, even if it is love at first sight. It's still important. Very retiring and gentlemanly he was. Even his voice was gentle. He'd had the quinsy and swollen gland when he was young, he told me, and it had left him with a weak throat and a hesitating, whispering fashion of speech. He was always well-dressed, very neat and plain, but his eyes were weak, just as mine are, and he wore tinted glasses against the glare. Well, and what happened when Mr. Windybank, your stepfather, returned to France? Mr. Hosmer Angel came to the house again and proposed that we should marry before Father came back. He was in a dreadful earnest that made me swear with my hands on the testament that whatever happened, I would always be true to him. Mother said that he was quite right to make me swear, and that it was a sign of his passion. Mother was all in favour from the first, and was even fonder of him than I was. Then, when they talked of marrying within the week, I began to ask about father, but they both said never to mind about father, but just to tell him afterwards. And Mother said she would make it all right with him. I didn't quite like that, Mr. Holmes. It seemed funny that I should ask his leave, as he was only a few years older than me, but I didn't want to do anything on the sly. So I wrote to father in Bordeaux, where the company has its French offices, but the letter came back to me on the very morning of the wedding. It missed him then. Yes, sir, for he had started to England just before it arrived. Love at first sight, isn't that what romance movies teach isn't real? I don't know. I can't say I've experienced it, but everyone's very different in the world, so who am I to say it doesn't exist and that people don't experience it? I don't know. People, emotions. Ha! That was unfortunate. Your wedding was arranged then, for the Friday. Was it to be in church? Yes, sir, but very quietly. It was to be at St. Saviour's, near King's Cross, and we were to have breakfast afterwards at St. Pancras Hotel. Hosmer came for us in a hansom, but as there were two of us, he put us both into and stepped himself into a four-wheeler, which happened to be the only other cab in the street. We got to the church first, and when the four-wheeler drove up, we waited for him to step out, but he never did. And when the cabman got down from the box and looked up, there was no one there. The cabman said that he could not imagine what had become of him, for he had seen him get in with his own eyes. That was last Friday, Mr. Holmes, and I have never seen or heard anything since then to throw any light upon what became of him. Did you know you can mod Skyrim into letting you be able to marry a Draugr? Oh, that's interesting. So he got in the car to go get married, but then he vanished. It seems to me that you have been very shamefully treated, said Holmes. Oh, no, sir. He was too good and kind to leave me, so why? All the morning he was saying to me that whatever happened, I was to be true, and that even if something quite unforeseen occurred to separate us, I was always to remember that I was pledged to him, and that he would claim his pledge sooner or later. It seems strange talk for a wedding morning, but what happened since gives meaning to it. Most certainly does. Your own opinion is, then, that some unforeseen catastrophe has occurred to him? Yes, sir. I believe that he foresaw some danger, or else he would have talked so, or else he would not have talked so. And then I think that what he foresaw happened. But you have no notion as to what it could have been. None. One more question. How did your mother take the matter? She was angry, and said I was never to speak of the matter again. And your father, did you tell him? Yes, and he seemed to think, with me, that something has happened, and that I should hear of Hosmer again. And that should I hear of Hosmer again? As he said, what interest could anyone have in bringing me to the doors of the church and then leaving me? Now, if he had borrowed my money, or if he had married me and got my money settled on him, there might be some reason, but Hosmer was very independent about money, and never would look at shilling for mine. And yet, what could have happened? And why could he not write? Oh, it drives me half mad to think of it, and I can't sleep a wink at night. She pulled the little handkerchief out of her muff and began to sob heavily into it. I shall glance into the case for you, said Holmes, rising, and I have no doubt that we shall reach some definite result. Let the weight of the matter rest upon me now, and do not let your mind dwell upon it any further. Above all, try to let Mr. Hosmer Angel vanish from your memory, as he has done so from your life. Then, you don't think I'll see him again? I fear not. Then what has happened to him? You will leave that question in my hands. I should like an accurate description of him, and any letters of his which you can spare. I advertised for him in last Saturday's Chronicles, said she. Here is the slip, and here are 4 letters from him. Thank you. And your address? Number 31 Lion Place, Camberwell. Mr. Angel's address, you never had it, I understand. Where is your father's place of business? He travels for Westhouse at Marbank, the great claret importers of Fenchurch Street. Thank you. You have made your statement very clearly. You will leave the papers here, and remember the advice which I have given. Let the whole incident be a sealed book, and do not allow it to affect your life. You're very kind, Mr. Holmes, but I cannot do that. I shall be true to Hosmer. He shall find me ready when he comes back. For all the preposterous hat and the veracious face, there was something noble in the simple faith of our visitor, which compelled our respect. She laid her little bundle of papers upon the table, and went her way, with a promise to come again whenever she might be summoned. Sherlock Holmes sat silent for a few minutes, with his fingertips still pressed together, his legs stretched out in front of him, and his gaze directed upwards to the ceiling. Then he took down from the rack the old and oily clay pipe, which was to him as a counsellor, and having lit it, he leaned back in his chair, with the thick blue cloud wreath spinning up from him, and a look of infinite languor on his face. Quite an interesting study, that maiden, he observed. I found her more interesting than her little problem, which, by the way, is a rather trite one. You will find parallel cases, if you consult my index, in Andover in 77, and there was something of a sort at Hague last year. Old as the idea, however, there was 1 or 2 details which were new to me, but the maiden herself was the most instructive. You appear to read a good deal upon her, which was quite invisible to me, I remarked. Not invisible, but unnoticed, Watson. You did not know where to look, and so you missed all that was important. I could never bring you to realize the importance of sleeves, and suggestiveness of thumbnails, or the great issues that many hang from a bootlace. Now, what did you gather from that woman's appearance? Describe it. I'm surprised you've got a fireplace going, wearing a jumper that looks like it's meant for winter, and a detective coat over it, and you're not even sweating, or panning, or showing any signs of exertion. The magic of anime. That's because I have the power of anime on my side. Not quite God in anime, but definitely the power of anime. Well, she... Burn! I do burn. Well, she had a slate-coloured, broad-rimmed straw hat with a feather of brickish red. Her jacket was black, with black beads sewn upon it, and a fringe of little black jet ornaments. I'm gonna need to blow my nose. No god, just anime. There are no gods here but me. No, that's not right either. Bet when you're done streaming, you're just gonna pass out and the tea fairies will need to drag you to bed. Maybe. But you don't know that. Shh. Stop revealing all my secrets, Void. A fringe of little black jet ornaments. Her dress was brown, rather darker than coffee colour, with a little purple plush at the neck and sleeves. Her gloves were greyish and were borne through at the right forefinger. Her boots I didn't observe. She had small, round, hanging gold earrings and a general air of being fairly well-to-do in a vulgar, uncomfortable, easygoing way. Sherlock clapped his hands softly together. "On my word, Watson, you are coming along wonderfully. You have really done well, indeed. It is true that you have missed everything of importance, but you have hit upon the method, and you have a quick eye for colour. Nevertheless, to general impressions, my boy, but concentrate yourself upon the details. At first glance, as always, at a woman's sleeve. In a man, it is perhaps better to first take the knee of the trouser. As you observe, this woman has plush upon her sleeve, which is a useful material for showing traces. The double line a little above the wrist, where the typewriter presses against the table, was beautifully defined. The sewing machine of the hand type leaves similar marks, but only on the left arm and on the side of the farthest from the thumb, instead of being right across the broadest part, as this was. I then glanced at her face, and observing the dint of princeliness at either side of her nose, I ventured to remark upon short sight and typewriting, which seemed to surprise her. It's kind of why I like the Sherlock Holmes stories. I love the, and this is how I figured this out. I like the reveals. I like reveals! Even if it's only little things like this. It surprised me. But surely it was obvious. I was then much surprised and interested on glancing down to observe that through her boots, which she was wearing, were not unlike each other. They were really odd ones. The one having a slightly decorated toe cap, and the other a plain one. One was buttoned only in the 2 lower buttons out of 5, and the other at 1st, 3rd, and 5th. Now, when you see that a young lady, otherwise neatly dressed, has come away from the house with odd boots, half-buttoned, it is no great deduction to say that she came away in a hurry. And what else? I asked, keenly interested, as I always was, by my friend's incisive reasoning. I noted, in passing, that she had written a note before leaving home after being fully dressed. You observed that her right glove was torn at the forefinger, but you did not apparently see that both the glove and the finger were stained with violet ink. She had written in a hurry and dipped her pen too deep. It must have been this morning, or the mark would not remain clear upon the finger. All this is amusing, though rather elementary. But I must go back to business, Watson. Would you mind reading me the advertised description of Mr. Hostmer Angel? I held the little printed slip to the light. Missing, it said, on the morning of the 14th, a gentleman named Hostmer Angel, about 5'7" in height, inches in height, strongly built, shallow complexion, black hair, a little bald in the centre, bushy black side whiskers, and moustache. Tinted glasses, slightly inflammatory of speech, was dressed, when last seen, in a black frock coat faced with silk, black waistcoat, gold Albert chain, and grey Harris tweed trousers, with brown gaiters over elastic side boots. Wow. Known to have been employed in an office in Leadenhall Street. Anybody bringing, etc., etc. Can you count how many times there's supernatural phenomena, unexplained poisons, and a body double or a secret passageway in this detective novel? Oddly specific, but I think it'll be fun to me. Currently none. None of these have been used in the... None of them were used in the Scandal in Bohemia, and none of them have been used in this one yet. So, none. 0. That will do, said Holmes. As for letters, he continued, glancing over them, they are very commonplace. Absolutely no clue in them to Mr. Angel, save the quotes of Bal Squance. Save that he quotes Bal Squance. There is one remarkable point, however, which will no doubt strike you. I also know they'd never make the detective the culprit. Well, yeah, because it's Sherlock Holmes. It would kind of ruin it if they made him the culprit. Besides, Arthur Conan Doyle hated Sherlock with a passion because he didn't want to write about him in the end, but he got so popular he couldn't not write about him. To the point he tried to murder him, but the fans didn't like that. Not only that, but the signature is typewritten. They are typewritten, I remarked. Not only that, but the signature is typewritten. Look at the neat little Hostner angel at the bottom. There is a date, you see, but no superscription except Leadenhall Street, which is rather vague. Hello there, Cobbzilla, welcome. The point about the signature is very suggestive. In fact, we may call it conclusive. Of what? My dear fellow, is it possible that you do not see how strongly it bears upon this case? I cannot say that I do. It were that he wished to be able to deny his signature if an action for breach of promise were instituted. No, that was not the point. However, I shall write 2 letters which should settle the matter. One is to a firm in the city. The other is to the young lady's stepfather, Mr. Windibank, asking him whether he could meet us here at 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. It is just as well that we should do business with the male relatives. And now, Doctor, we can do nothing until the answers to those letters come. So, we may put our little problem upon the shelf for the instant. Okay, so small summary. A man, a woman with somewhat of a controlling stepfather went with her mother to a ball where she met a man. The man visited them the next day to make sure they got home on time and all safe. And then they went for a walk in which they got engaged because that's normal to get engaged so early. Once hydration. They went for more walks. The stepfather came back from his time in France, and the no, it's me. I know. I tried. The cough kind of escaped me there. I was trying to hold it down until I at least finished my sentence. But anyway. And they didn't really talk to each other except for letters until stepfather came back. He had her promise to marry him. The mother was very encouraging of this. Then the father went off to France again, and they decided to get married while he was away because he disapproved. She thinks this is shady, but she went along with it because mother went along with it as well. And then when they got in the car to go to the church, they stopped outside the church and he disappeared. He vanished. He was in like the conductor's car, so they couldn't see him. So they stopped outside the church. They expected him to get out and open the door for them because that's what you do. And he never did. He disappeared. So what do we think happened? I have no idea. I'm honestly not sure. God. I thought I would collate the facts. If you guys want to do some theory crafting. Me, every time I get cut off mid-sentence by a cough, I'm gonna punch my chest so I can finish talking then. I would love to do that, but I feel like that would make it worse somehow, so probably best not. Let's continue. You can theory craft. I had so many reasons to believe in my friend's subtle powers of reasoning and extraordinary energy in action that I felt that he must have some solid grounds for the assured and easy demeanour with which he treated the singular mystery which he had been called upon to fathom. Once only I had known him to fail, in the case of the King of Bohemia and of the Irene Adler photograph. Yes, the one woman who could outsmart him. But when I looked back to the weird business of the sign of 4 and the extraordinary circumstances connected with the study in scarlet, I felt that it would be a strange tangle indeed, which he could not unravel. Head empty, no theories. Bah! You may have no theories. That's okay. I don't really have a good theory either. I left him then, still puffing at his black clay pipe, with the conviction that when I came again on the next evening, I would find that he held in his hand all the clues which would lead up to the identity of the disappearing bridegroom of Miss Mary Sutherland. A professional case of great gravity was engaging my own attention at the time, and the whole of the next day I was busy at the bedside of a sufferer. It was not until close upon 6 o'clock that I found myself free, and was able to spring into a hansom and drive to Baker Street, half afraid that I might be too late to assist in the denouement of this little mystery. I found Sherlock Holmes alone, however, half asleep, with his long, thin form curled up in the recesses of his armchair. A formidable array of bottles and test tubes with the pungent, cleany smell of hydrochloric acid told me that he had spent the day in the chemical work, which was so dear to him. "Well, have you solved it?" I asked as I entered. "Yes, it was bismuthate of baritura." No, the mystery," I cried. "Oh, that!" I thought of the salt that I have been working upon. Then there was never any mystery in the matter, though. As I said yesterday, some of the details are of interest. The only drawback is there is no law, I fear, that can touch the scoundrel. Where'd he get the hydrochloric acid? Don't ask. He's Sherlock Holmes. He can do whatever he wants. He probably asked a favour from someone he helped. Like Kim Possible. Like, she gets everywhere by asking for favours. That's how Sherlock Holmes does things. Also, this is back in the past, where there probably isn't as heavy a law on these things. Who was he, then? And what was his object in Miss Sutherland? In deserting Miss Sutherland? He made it himself. He probably did! That's a good point, Cornelia. He probably made it himself. The question was hardly out of my mouth, and Holmes had not yet opened his lips to reply, when we heard a heavy footfall in the passage, and a tap at the door. "This is the girl's stepfather, Mr. James Windybank," said Holmes. "He has written to me to say that he would be here at 6. Come in." Some people are just that cool. He is that cool. The man who entered was a sturdy, middle-sized fellow, some 30 years of age, clean-shaven and shallow-skinned, with a bland, insinuating manner, and a pair of wonderfully sharp and penetrating grey eyes. He shot a questioning glance at each of us, placed his shiny top hat upon the sideboard, and with a slight bow, sidled down into the nearest chair. "Good evening, Mr. James Windibank," said Holmes. "I think that this typewritten letter is from you, in which you made an appointment with me for 6 o'clock. "Yes, sir. I am afraid that I am a little late, but I am not quite my own master, you know. I am sorry that Miss Sunderland has troubled you about this little matter, for I think it is far better not to wash linen of the sort in public. It was quite against my wishes that she came, but she is very excitable. She is a very excitable, impulsive girl, as you may have noticed, and she is not easily controlled when she has made up her mind on a point. Of course, I did not mind you so much, as you are not connected with the official police, but it is not pleasant to have a family misfortune like this nosied abroad. Besides, it is a useless expense, for how could you possibly find Hostma Angel?" "On the contrary," said Holmes quietly, "I have every reason to believe that I will succeed in discovering Mr. Hostma Angel." Mr. Windibank gave a violent start and dropped his gloves. "I am delighted to hear it," he said. "It is a curious thing," remarked Holmes, "that a typewriter has really quite as much individuality as a man's handwriting. Unless they are quite new, no two of them write exactly alike. Some of the letters are more worn than others, and some wear only on one side. Now, you remark in this note of yours, Mr. Windibank, that in every case there is some little slurring over the E, and a slight defect in the tail of the R. There are 14 other characteristics, but those are the more obvious. We all do our correspondence with this machine at the office, and no doubt it is a little worn," our visitor answered, glancing keenly at Holmes with his bright little eyes. "And now I will show you what is really a very interesting study, Mr. Windibank," Holmes continued. "I think of writing another little monograph some of these days on the typewriter and its relation to crime. It is a subject to which I have devoted some little attention. I have here 4 letters which purport to come from the missing man. They are all typewritten. In each case, not only are the E's slurred, but the R's tailless. But you will observe, if you care to use my magnifying lens, that the 14th other characteristics to which I have alluded are all there as well." Sorry, 1 second. There is an appetizer bot in my Twitch chat that I'm gonna get rid of. Goodbye. They're done. All dead. Murdered. That's my favorite kind of murder. Banning bots. Anyway. Mr. Windibank sprang out of his chair and picked up his hat. "I cannot waste time over this sort of fantastic talk, Mr. Holmes." "Oh, I know," he said. "If you can catch the man, catch him. Let me know when you have done it." "Certainly," said Holmes, stepping over and turning the key in the door. "Oh, dai des oe datsume neku 5. Oops. I let you know, then, that I have caught him." "Wait, where?" "It is you, Mr. Windibanks!" shouted Mr. Windibank, turning white as his lips, and glanced about him like a rat in a trap. "Oh, it won't do, really, it won't," said Holmes suavely. "There is no possible getting out of it, Mr. Windibank. It is quite too transparent, and it was a very bad compliment when you said that it was impossible for me to solve so simple a question. That's right. Sit down and let us talk it over." Officer collapsed into a chair with a ghastly face and a glitter of moisture on his brow. It's not actionable," he stammered. "Hello, Ghoul. Welcome. You're just here for the reveal. Good timing." "I am very much afraid that it is not, but between ourselves, Mr. Windibank, it was as cruel and selfish and heartless a trick in a petty way as ever came before me. Now, let me run over the course of events, and you will contradict me if I go wrong." The man sat huddled up in his chair, with his head sunk upon his breast, like one who is utterly crushed. Holmes stuck his feet upon the corner of the mantelpiece, and, leaning back with his hands in his pockets, began talking, rather to himself, as it seemed, than to us. Okay, before the reveal comes, I'm gonna have a quick drink of water, so hopefully I don't cough halfway through. Okay. "The man married a woman very much older than himself for her money," he said, "and he enjoyed the use of the money of the daughter as long as she lived with them. It was a considerable sum for people in their position, and the loss of it would have made a serious difference. It was worth an effort to preserve it. The daughter was of a good, amicable disposition, but affectionate and warm-hearted in her ways, so that it was evident that with her fair personal advantages and her little income, she would not be allowed to remain single long. Now her marriage would mean, of course, the loss of 100 a year. So what does her stepfather do to prevent it? He takes the obvious course of keeping her at home and forbidding her to seek the company of people her own age. But soon he found that would not answer forever. She became resistive, insistent upon her rights, and finally announced her positive intention of going to a certain ball. What does her clever stepfather do then? He conceives an idea. More creditable to his head than his heart, which, the connivance and assistance of his wife, he disguised himself, covered those keen eyes with tinted glasses, masked his face with a moustache and a pair of brushy whiskers, sunk that clear voice into an insinuating whisper, and, doubly secure on account of the girl's short sight, he appeared as Mr. Hosmer Angel, and keeps off the other lovers by making love himself. "It was the stepfather all along!" "It was only a joke at first," groaned our visitor. "We never thought that she would have been so carried away, as if." "Very likely not. However, that may be, the young lady was very decidedly carried away, and having quite made up her mind that her stepfather was in France, the suspicion of treachery never for an instant entered her mind. She was flattered by the gentleman's attentions, and the effect was increased by the loudly expressed admiration of her mother. Then Mr. Angel began to call, for it was obvious that the matter should be pushed as far as it would go, if the real effect were to be produced. There were meetings and an engagement, which would finally secure the girl's affections from turning to anyone else. But the deception could not be kept up forever. These pretend journeys to France were rather cumbersome. The thing to do was, clearly, to bring the business to an end in such a dramatic manner that it would leave a permanent impression upon the young lady's mind, and prevent her from looking upon any other suitor for some time to come. Hence those vows of fidelity exacted upon a testament, and hence also the allusions to a possibility of something happening on the very morning of the wedding. James Windibank wished Miss Sutherland to be bound to Hosmer Angel, and so uncertain as to his fate, that for 10 years to come, at any rate, she would not listen to another man. As far as the church door he brought her, and then, as he would go no farther, he conveniently vanished away by the old trick of stepping out of one door of the four-wheeler and out the other. I think that was the chain of events, Mr. Windibank. Oh, no. Oh, lordy, so they wanted to keep her for her money. I've heard of parents like this at IRL. I've spoken to people who have parents that maybe wouldn't go this far, but really don't want them to leave because they're charging them rent. Terrible. Our visitor recovered something of his assurance while Holmes had been talking, and he rose from his chair now with a cold sneer upon his face. "It may be so, it may not, Mr. Holmes," he said. "But if you are so very sharp, you ought to be sharp enough to know that it is you who are breaking the law now, and not me. I have done nothing actionable from the first, but as long as you keep that door locked, you lay yourself open to an action for assault and illegal constraint. The law cannot, as you say, touch you," said Holmes, unlocking and throwing open the door. "Yet there was never a man who deserved punishment more. If the young lady has a brother or a friend, he ought to lay whip across your shoulders, by Jove," he continued, flushing up the sight of the bitter sneer upon the man's face. "It was not a part of my duties to my client, but here's a hunting crop handy, and I think I shall just treat myself to it." I'd burst out laughing at my mum and stepfather if they even suggested I stay around because I make 10 times what they do. And it's not a suggestion. He took 2 swift steps to the whip. Before he could grasp it, there was a wild clatter of steps on the stairs. The heavy hall door banged, and from the window he could see Mr. James Windibank running at top speed down the road. "There's a cold-blooded scoundrel," said Holmes, laughing as he threw himself down on his chair once more. "That fellow will rise from crime to crime until he does something very bad and ends up on the gallows. The case has, in some respects, been not entirely devoid of interest. I cannot now entirely see all the steps of your reasoning." "Sup, hello, Orion Pax, welcome," I remarked. "Well, of course it was obvious from the first that this Mr. Hosmer Angel must have some strong object for his curious conduct, and it was equally clear that the only man who really profited from the incident, as far as we could see, was the stepfather. Then, the fact that the 2 men were never together, but the one always appeared when the other was away, was suggestive. So were the tinted spectacles and the curious voice, which both hinted at the disguise. As did the bushy whiskers. My suspicions were all confirmed by his peculiar action in typewriting his signature, which of course inferred that his handwriting was so familiar to her that she would recognize even the smallest sample of it. You see, all these isolated facts, together with many minor ones, all pointed to the same direction. And how did you verify them? Having once spotted my man, it was easy to get cooperation. I knew the firm for which this man worked. Having taken the printed description, I eliminated everything from which it could be the result of the disguise. The whiskers, the glasses, the voice, and I sent to the firm with the request that they would inform me whether it answered to the description of any of their travellers. I had already noticed the peculiarities of the typewriter. I wrote to the man himself at his business address asking him if he would come here. As I expected, his reply was typewritten and revealed the same trivial characteristic defects. The same post brought me a letter from Westhouse and Marbank of French Street to say the description tallied in every respect with that of their employee, James Winterbank. Voila. And Mrs. Sunderland? If I tell her, she will not believe me. You may remember the old Persian saying, there is danger for him who taketh the Tiger Club, and danger also for those whose snatches a delusion from a woman. There is as much sense in Hafiz as in Horace, and as much knowledge of the world. Aw, so he never told her? She deserves to know. That's rude. That's rude, Sherlock. Why would you not tell her? But that's one of the short stories done. We got through it. I don't think we have quite enough time for another one now, which is a shame. We can start it. Why not? As soon as they started explaining it, I started to understand. Wild applause! Woo! Woo! It was the stepfather all along. That's really fucked up. I mean, I guess it only worked because, like, the stepfather was close to her in age. So, like, yeah, it's creepy. It's still a little creepy. Wait, I thought we were doing a large book. No. Sherlock Holmes doesn't have large books. Void. They're mostly short stories. But no, we're not doing a large book. Sherlock Holmes is a collection of short stories, which is why I like them as fallback books, because it's just, we can just do bits and bobs. Like, I've done Scandal of Bohemia, we've done Case of Identity now. Should we do another roll for another one? Let's see what we got. We'll do a D10, but if I get a 2, then I have to roll again. Let's go. Get my dice out. Hound of Baskerville is a moderately sized book. Yeah, there are some that are like full books. These ones are not. These are general adventure ones. But Sherlock Holmes, you've got to be careful because some of them are still under copyright because the the Conan Doyle estate is a bitch. Because they want to keep making money out of their ancestors' work. Even though it should be free by this point. But that's a whole nother thing. Sherlock's a great thing. You know, like, it was one of the first, Sherlock was one of the first victims of copyright. Or at least one of the first, like, widely recorded victims of copyright. Because the writer for the Lupin stories really wanted Sherlock Holmes to be his adversary. And wrote him in as the adversary for Lupin. But they couldn't do it. So instead, he just changed the name slightly, and the character Herlock Sholmes was born, and I'm not even joking about that. That is a real character, and I love it. Edinburgh. Hello, maiden, welcome. Yes, we are full detective mode. We have a lovely detective outfit. Let me just get on to Project Gutenberg. Wait a second, the stepfather was like 2 years older than the stepdaughter? That gives me the same energy as your former best friend gets with your mum. And now you have to explain why your college classmate is your stepfather. Very similar kind of thing. There was the stepfather was 15 years younger than the mother. So there was like a really weird different age difference between them. So, for those who don't know, Project Gutenberg is a really wonderful website which has loads of free books. Loads of books that are royalty free. So if anyone is looking to read... Hello, Brandy Holmes. Sorry late for attendance. You were busy. No worries, no worries. Yeah, it's a creepy age difference. It was definitely a creepy age difference. And then made even more creepy by that short stories. But Sherlock. Let's see what it's got. Yeah, so we've got Valley of Fear, The Return of Sherlock Holmes, Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, Study in Scarlet, Hound of Baskervilles, Sign of Four, which did get mentioned in this one, so there's a few that are, like, not short stories. Oh, we should read Lupin at some point. And then there's the memoirs of Sherlock Holmes. We should do more Sherlock. We should read a lot more Sherlock. I really enjoy reading Sherlock. It's like that joke from Bill and Ted. Hey, Bill, your stepmom is cute. Shut it, Ted. Remember when she was a senior and we were freshmen? Shut up, Ted. That's exactly what it was. That's exactly what it was. And it's gross. And it's a little bit gross. It's gross then. It's gross now. What should we do? We have 40 minutes or so. I wish I could see how long these are. So we've got 1, 2. That's a lot. That's already a lot. Not sure I can read that in 40 minutes. But it's still not as long as, like, the Carbuncle one was. That one took me forever. I could spend speed reading. I could try. Let's see Let's see how fast we can read. The Red-Headed League. I had called upon my friend, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, one day in the autumn of last year and found him in deep conversation with a very stout, florid-faced, elderly gentleman with fiery red hair. With an apology for my intrusion, I was about to withdraw when Holmes pulled me abruptly into the room and closed the door behind me. Damn, that was pretty good, actually. I didn't make a mistake. The Red-Headed League. Can you read the final 1% of last book while slow reading? You mean the last book from last stream, you mean? No. No, if you would like to know more about that book, then you should go and buy it yourself, because at the same time, I'm not... Just because I didn't vibe with it doesn't mean I'm going to spoil the ending for anyone. You could not possibly have come at a better time, my dear Watson, he said cordially. I was afraid that you were engaged. So I am. Very much so. Then I wait in the next room. Not at all. This gentleman, Mr. Wilson, has been my partner and... Mr. Watson, correct? Has been my partner and helper in many of my most successful cases, and I have no doubt that he will be of the utmost use to me in yours also. The stout gentleman half rose from his chair and gave a bob of greeting, with a quick little questioning glance from his small fat encircled eyes. Try the settee. What do you mean, my last book? I thought you meant the last book I wrote. You mean the last... What do you mean last book? You mean my last Moon Girl book? That doesn't exist. I haven't written it yet. Well, the last book I ever wrote. That doesn't exist. I haven't written it. Try the settee, said Holmes, relapsing into his armchair and putting his fingertips together, as was his custom when in judicial moods. I know, my dear Watson, that you share my love of all that is bizarre and outside of the conveniences of humdrum routine of everyday life. The last book you read completely on the channel, that would be Letters in the Attic, I believe. You have shown your relish for it by the enthusiasm which you prompted to your chronicle, and if you will excuse my saying so, somewhat to embellish so many of my little adventures. Your cases have indeed been of the greatest interest to me, I observed. You will remember that I remarked the other day, just before we went into the very simple problem presented by Miss Mary Sutherland, that for strange effects and extraordinary combinations we must go to life itself, which is far more daring than any effort of imagination. A proposition which I took the liberty of doubting. You did, Doctor, but nonetheless you must come round to my view, for otherwise I shall keep on piling fact upon fact until your reason breaks down under them and acknowledges me to be right. Now, Mr. J.B. Wilson here has been good enough to call upon me this morning, and you begin to narrate which promises to be one of the most singular which I have listened for some time. You have heard me remark that the strangest and most unique things are very often connected with the larger, but with the smaller crimes, and occasionally, indeed, where there is room for doubt, whether any positive crime has been committed. As far as I have heard, it is impossible for me to say whether the present case is an instance of crime or not, but the course of events is certainly among the most singular that I have listened to. Perhaps, Mr. Wilson, you would have the great kindness to recommence your narrative. I ask you do not merely because my friend Dr. Watson has not heard the opening part, but also because the peculiar nature of the story makes me anxious to have every possible detail from your lips. As a rule, when I have heard some slight indication of the course of events, I am able to guide myself by the thousands of other similar cases which occur up to my memory. In the present instance, I am forced to admit that the facts are, to the best of my belief, unique. Ooh. The portly client puffed out his chest with an appearance of some little pride and pulled a dirty and wrinkled newspaper from the inside pocket of his greatcoat. The power went out his help. Didn't miss anything. You didn't really, to be honest. It was mainly just Holmes showing off again. Telling Watson how he's going to prove him so very wrong again. As he glanced down the advertisement column, with his head thrust forward and the paper flattened out on his knee, I took a look at the man and endeavoured, after the fashion of my companion, to read the indications which might be presented by his dress or appearance. I did not gain very much, however, by my inspection. Our visitor bore every mark of being an average commonplace British tradesman, obese, pompous, and slow. He wore rather baggy grey shepherd's trousers, and not over-clean black frock coat, unbuttoned in the front, and a drab waistcoat with a heavy brassy Albert chain, and a square pierced bit of metal dangling down as an ornament. A frayed top hat and a faded brown overcoat with a wrinkled velvet collar lay upon a chair beside him. Altogether looked as I would. There was nothing remarkable about the man, save his blazing red hair, and the expression of extreme chagrin and discontent on his features. Are you going to have a tea party with chat when you hit the first 100 books? You read Sherlock's short story already, so it should be at 9905. I don't tend to count anything until I've managed to put a video out on my 1000 books playlist. That is like my official record of what books I've read. So until those videos are out, that count doesn't go down because I need proof. I feel like I need proof of the paper. So all of those review videos and things like that are my proof of my 10,000 books. So it'll go down then. But you are right, so I'm going to write it down so I make sure I can remember to actually add it on. It was Case of Identity, wasn't it? Yeah, Case of Identity. There we go. Sherlock Holmes, quick eye in my occupation, and he shook his head with a smile as he noticed my questioning glances. Beyond the obvious facts, he has at some time done manual labour, and he takes snuff. So he takes cocaine. That he is a Freemason, that he has been in China, and that he has done a considerable amount of writing lately. I can deduce nothing else. Mr. James Wilson started up in his chair, with his forefinger upon the paper, but his eyes upon my companion. How in the name of good fortune did you know all that, Mr. Holmes? He asked. How did you know, for example, that I did manual labour? As true as gospel, for I began as a ship's carpenter. Your hands, my dear sir. Your right is quite a size larger than your left. You have worked with it, and the muscles are more developed. Well, the snuff, then, and the Freemasonry. I won't insult your intelligence by telling you how I read that, especially as, rather against the strict rules of the order, you use an arc and compass breastpin. Ah, of course, I forgot that. But the writing, what else can be indicative by the right cuff, so very shiny, 4 or 5 inches, and for the left one, the smooth patch near the elbow, you rest upon the desk. Well, but China, the fish that you have tattooed immediately above your right wrist, could only have been done in China. I have made a small study of tattoo marks, and have even contributed to the literature of the subject. The trick of staining the fish's scales of a delicate pink is quite peculiar in China. When, in addition, I see a Chinese coin hanging from your watch chain, the matter becomes even more simple. Did he just say his right arm is more muscular than his left? The heck? Yes, that is exactly what he said. Basically meaning his right is his dominant hand, and he has worked mostly with that. Mr. Jabez Wilson laughed heavily. Well, I never, he said. I thought at first that you had done something clever, but I see there was nothing in it after all. I begin to think, Watson, said Holmes, that I make a mistake in explaining. Oem ignotum pro magnifico, you know? And my poor little reputation, such as it is, will suffer shipwreck if I am so candid. Can you not find the advertisement, Mr. Wilson? Yes, I have it now, he said. He answered with his thick red fingers planted halfway down the column. Here it is. This is what began it all. You just read it for yourself, sir. I took the paper from him and read as follows. To the Red Head League, on account of the bequest of the late Ezekiel Hopkins of Lebanon, Pennsylvania, USA, there is now another vacancy open which entitles a member of the League to a salary of £4 a week for purely nominal services. All red-headed men who are sound in body and mind and above the age of 21 years are eligible. Apply in person on Monday at 11 o'clock to Duchess Duncan Ross at the offices of the League, 7 Pope's Court, Fleet Street. What on earth does this mean? Oh, there it is, normal-sized phantom. We haven't ejaculated. Yay! I ejaculated. After I had twice read over the extraordinary announcement. So extraordinary. English language. Holmes chuckled and wriggled in his chair, as was his habit when in high spirits. It is a little off the beaten track, isn't it? Woo! Uncorks champagne bottle. So, Maiden, here's a lovely bit of English. You did your English lit not too long ago, right? Your GCSE? Well, one of the fun things about the English language is that different words meant different things a long time ago. This book, man, it's going to get you demonetized. No, it's not. Ejaculation is not a bad word. It is not a bad word. It's one of those streams. Because it's just, words meant different things in different time eras. Ejaculation at the time just meant to exclaim. Exclaim is probably the best word to replace it in our modern language. But yeah, I highly doubt that's going to get me demonetized. If it is, then it is. That's just how we roll, because, you know, exclaiming loudly, yes. I'm young, but I know what that word means. You do in your modern terms, but you know it in Sherlock Holmes terms. In the 1800s, what it meant then. Because they're all different. All the language is very different. And that's why I love it. That's why I love it. That's why I love the English language. That's why I love language in general. I love it as it goes, and it does many things, and it changes, and it's cool, and language is cool. I really need to do some, like, etymology streams. That would be so much fun. Is it not? I don't know a good sentence to put it in without making it sound sus. That is literally not a sus way of saying ejaculated. I ejaculated after I'd read it twice. It's literally a way of saying he said it distressed, or he was surprised. It literally just means surprised. Brownie streams are very educational. Petition to get brownie in schools. I literally want to do some, like, maybe origin of words or origins of sayings streams. I think that would be so much fun. I do clip my own vids. And I probably won't clip that because because it will get demonetized if it is a specific clip. Yeah, it will get demonetized if it's a specific clip for that, because we are 1 hour and 36 minutes into the stream. I highly doubt that we're getting that great video idea. Yes, there's a few things I want to do that are more educational streams. I want to do etymology, origins of, like, words and sayings. I also want to do one that it's a bit more of a passionate one for me, but strange ways of telling stories that have appeared because of certain technologies and apps and things like that, like the TikTok sitcom, I like to call it, where, like, we have, like, little stories in snippets, but they're also, like, an office situation. Like sitcoms, they're always fun. And then there's, like, the text novel where can we get Brownie teaching us things streams? Yeah, I kind of want to do them, and they're just going to take a lot of research is the thing, especially to make them 2 hours. But there's the text novel, which is do you know how Japan, as much as they have a lot of good technology, they're actually really slow to pick up technology. And when they had flip phones and stuff, where we'd already moved on to smartphones at that point, but they had flip phones for a lot longer than we did, and they had the text novel, which was basically novels that had chapters that were maybe a few sentences long, and they would just flip through those sentences and chapters, and it I don't know, it's just so cool. I would need to do some more research to be able to explain it properly, but there was one text novel that actually managed to go on and get an anime adaptation. It went from sentences on a screen to an anime adaptation, and I just think that's so cool. Please don't watch a YouTube video guide and then do a 2-hour stream and call it an education stream. I mean, why would I do that? I would do a lot more research than a YouTube video guide. No, we do proper research, but I'm going to do an educational stream, which is a lot more than I would do for the average stream. So it would take a bit of work, but I would love to do some more, like, looking into actual writing and origins and things like that. Yeah, fun times. Anyway, I got entirely distracted. This is fine! Anyway. Holmes chuckled and wriggled in his chair, as was his habit when in high spirits. It was a little off the beaten track, isn't it? He said. And now, Mr. Wilson, off you go and scratch and tell us about yourself, your household, and the effect which this advertisement had on your fortunes. You will make note, Doctor, of the paper and the date. It is the Morning Chronicle of April 22nd, 1890, just 2 months ago. Very good now, Mr. Wilson. Well, it is just as I have been telling you, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, said Jabez Wilson, mopping up his forehead. I have a small pawnbroker's business at Corburg Square near the city. It's not a very large affair, and of late years it has done more than just give me a living. I used to be able to keep 2 assistants, but now I only keep 1. And I would have a job to pay him, but that he is willing to come for half wages, as so to learn the business. What is the name of this obliging youth? Asked Sherlock Holmes. Oh, speaking about technology, it improves so fast that I sometimes feel like a 40-year-old mother trying to be hip with trends. Briny, yo, my fellow Zoomers, what's skibbity riz, y'all? This is why I don't try to be down with kids. I still don't really understand skibbity. Riz, I have learned what riz means. I don't quite get skibbity. I also very much dislike the new Menti B. I very much dislike that. We don't talk like that. But maiden, you gotta live up to the Zoomer stereotype, right? Just like I need to live up to the grandma stereotype. Gen Z doesn't talk like that. It's Gen Alpha. Oh yes, I forgot that it's like, this is like when like some of the older generations still think millennials are kids and they're like pretty high up in the workforce, and then Gen Z are actually starting in the workforce. So we forget that the teenagers are a different, or the kids are different, and it's just wild. Generations, bro. The passage of time, bro. It's wild. You can't tell the difference? Boy, there's a difference. Respect the difference. Gen Alpha are the ones that get it, that will never know the dangers of the internet because no one will teach them. That's something I've also been tempted to do, is teaching the younger generations the dangers of the internet. and like a lot of things about the internet that I don't feel like are being taught and should be taught right now. Googling skills for one. Apparently that's like, anyway, this is really not, no, I'm getting so goddamn sidetracked. Gen Alpha will have a traumatic experience like you. It's always traumatic going into the workforce, I'm not gonna lie. But I think it's definitely gonna be tricky for further generations, that is for sure. But anyway, we're reading Sherlock Holmes, we're not worrying about future generations. We have enough existential dread in this country. Oh god. Yeah, we need to stop. Teaching people how to protect themselves on the internet, like delivering merch mail properly. No. Yes, book time. His name is Vincent Sapalling, and he's not such a youth either. It's hard to say his age. I should not wish a smarter assistant, Mr. Holmes, and I know very well that he could better himself and earn twice what I am able to give him. But, after all, if he is satisfied, why should I put ideas in his head? Why, indeed? You seem most fortunate in having an employee who comes under full market price. It is not a common experience among employers in this age. I don't know that your assistant is not as remarkable as your advertisement. Oh, he has his faults too, said Mr. Wilson. Never was such a fellow for photography, snapping away with a camera when he ought to be improving his mind, and when diving down into the cellar like a rabbit, into its hole to develop his pictures. That is his main fault. But, on the whole, he's a good worker. There's no vice in him. He is still with you, I presume? Yes, sir. He and a girl of 14, who does a bit of simple cooking and keeps the place clean. That's all I have in the house, for I am a widower, and never had any family. We live quietly, sir, the three of us, and we keep a roof over our heads and pay our debts if we do nothing more. The first thing that put us out was that advertisement. Spaulding, he came down into the office just this day, 8 weeks, with this very paper in his hands, and he says, "I wish to the Lord Mr. Wilson that I was a red-headed man." "Why is that?" I asked. "Why," he says, "there's another vacancy on the League of Red-Headed Men. It's worth quite a little fortune to any man who gets it, and I understand that there are more vacancies than there are men, so that the trustees are at their wits' end of what to do with the money. If my hair could only change colour, here's a nice little crib all ready for me to step into." "Why, what's that then?" I asked. "You see, Mr. Holmes, I am a very stay-at-home man, and as my business came to me instead of having to go to it, I was often weeks on end without putting my foot over the doormat. In that way, I didn't know much of what was going on outside, and I was always glad of a bit of news. Have you ever heard of the League of Red-Headed Men?" he asked with his eyes open. "Never. Why, I wonder at that, for you are eligible yourself for one of the vacancies." "And what are they worth?" I asked. "Oh, merely a couple of hundred a year, but the work is slight, and it need not interfere very much with one's other occupations." Well, you can easily think that that made me prick up my ears, for the business has not been good for some years, and an extra couple of hundred would have been very handy. "Tell me about it," said I. "Well," he said, showing me the advertisement, "you can see for yourself that the League has a vacancy, and there is the address where you should apply for particulars. As far as I make out, the League was founded by an American millionaire, Ezekiel Hopkins, who was very particular in his ways. He was himself red-headed and had great sympathy for all red-headed men. So, when he died, it was found that he had left his enormous fortune in the hands of trustees, with instructions to apply the interest in providing for easy berths to men whose hair was of that colour. From all I hear, it is splendid pay, and very little to do." "But," I said, "there would be millions of red-headed men who would apply." "Not so many as you may think," he answered. "You see, it is really confined to Londoners, and to grown men. This American had started from London when he was young, and he wanted to do the old town a turn good. Then again, I heard it is no use your applying if your hair is light red, or dark red, or anything but real, bright, blazing, fiery red. Now, if you cared to apply, Mr. Wilson, you would just walk in, but perhaps it would hardly be worth your while to put yourself out of the way for the sake of a few £100. Americans scare me, lol. My family could have got killed trying to find a way to Walmart. Can you try a cough drop or something? That isn't really gonna help for the specific stream. I mean, take the bit, but I don't have any. So, no. We suffer. We continue. Now it is a fact, gentlemen, as you see for yourselves, that my hair is full and rich tint, so that it seemed to me that if there was to be any competition in the matter, I stood a chance as many man that I had ever met. Vincent Spaulding seemed to know as much about it than I ought. He might prove useful. So I ordered him to put the shutters for the day and come right away with me. He was very willing to have a holiday, so we shut the business and started off with the address that was given in the advertisement. Walmart's environment is crazy. If you go find a wedding... Wedding? A wedding in a Walmart? What the fudge cake? I never hope to see such a sight again. Such a sight as that again, Mr. Holmes. From north, south, east, and west, every man who had a shade of red in his hair had tramped into this city to answer the advertisement. Fleet Street was choked with red-haired folk, and Pope's Court looked like a coster's orange barrow. I should not have thought there were so many in the whole country as were brought together by a single advertisement. Every shade of colour they were: straw, lemon, orange, brick, Irish settler, liver, clay. But, as Spaulding said, there were not many who had the real vivid flame-coloured tint. When I saw how many were waiting, I would have given up in despair, but Spaulding would not hear of it. How he did it, I cannot imagine, but he pushed and pulled and butted until he got me through the crowd and right up the steps which led to the office. There was a double stream upon the stair, some going in hope and some coming back dejected, but we wedged in as well as we could and soon found ourselves in the office. Yeah, it is kind of crazy in America to see how many guns. Like, I remember when I was in America once and I went to, like, this place. It was sportswear, but it had a hunting section. And damn, so many guns. Scary. An 11-inch machete in a Spanish store. Damn. You've never been to a Walmart during the small time you were in America? No, I never went to Walmart. Did not need to go to a Walmart while I was there. I don't know. I don't remember very well. It was a long time ago. We may have gone to a Walmart, but I don't think we did. Your experience has been a most entertaining one, remarked Holmes, as his client paused and refreshed his memory with a huge pinch of snuff. Pray continue your very interesting statement. There was nothing in the office but a couple of wooden chairs and a deal table, behind which sat a small man with a head even redder than mine. He said a few words to each candidate as I came up, and then he always managed to find some fault with them, which would disqualify them. Getting a vacancy did not seem to be such a very easy matter after all. However, when our turn came, the little man was much more favourable to me than any of the others, and he closed the door as we entered, so that we might have private words. And that's why you think twice before trying to burgle on an American homeowner's house. I mean, knives are just as good. Also, there also means a high chance of the burglar having a gun as well. I would rather there being a low chance of there having a gun than having a gun myself. This is Mr. Jabe Wilson, said my assistant, and he is willing to fill the vacancy in the league. And he is admirably suited for it, the other answered. He has every requirement. I cannot recall when I have seen anything so fine. He took a step backwards, cocked his head to one side, and gazed at my hair until I felt quite bashful. Then suddenly he lunged forward, wrung my hand, and congratulated me warmly on my success. It would be injustice to hesitate, he said. You will, however, I am sure, excuse me for taking an obvious precaution. With that he seized my hair in both hands and tugged it, until I yelled in the pain. There was water in your eyes, he said as he released. I perceive that all is as it should be. But we have to be careful. For we have twice been deceived by wigs, and once by paint. I could tell your tales of cobbler's wax. which would disgust you with human nature. He stepped over to the window and shouted through it at the top of his voice that the vacancy was filled. A groan of disappointment came up from below, and the folk all trooped away in different directions until there was not a redhead to be seen except my own and that of the manager. My name, he said, is Mr. Duncan Ross, and I am myself one of the pensioners upon the fund left by our noble benefactor. Are you a married man, Mr. Wilson? Have you a family? I answered that I had not. His face fell immediately. Dear me, he said gravely, that is very serious indeed. I am sorry to hear that. The fund was, of course, for the propagation and spread of redheads, as well as for their maintenance. It is exceedingly unfortunate that you should be a bachelor. My face lengthened at this, Mr. Holmes, for I thought that I was not to have the vacancy after all, but, after thinking it over for a few minutes, he said that it would be all right. In the case of another, he said, the objection might be fatal, but we must stretch the point in favour of a man with such a head of hair as yours. When shall you be able to enter upon your new duties? Well, it is a little awkward, for I have a business already, I said. Oh, never mind about that, Mr. Wilson, said Vincent Spaulding. I should be able to look after that for you. What would be the hours? I asked. 10 to 2. Now, my pawnbroker's business is mostly done of an evening, Mr. Holmes, especially Thursday and Friday evenings, which is just for payday. So it would suit me very well to earn a little in the mornings. Besides, I knew that my assistant was a good man, and that he would see to anything that turned up. That would suit me very well, said I. And the pay? It is £4 a week. And the work is purely nominal. What do you call purely nominal? Well, you have to be in the office, or at least in the building, the whole time. If you leave, you forfeit your whole position forever. The will is very clear upon that point. You don't comply with the conditions if you budge from the office during that time. It's only 4 hours a day, and I should not think of leaving, said I. No excuse will avail, said Mr. Duncan Ross. Neither sickness nor business nor anything else. There you must stay, or you will lose your billet. And the work is to copy out the Encyclopedia Britannica. There is the first volume of it in press. You must find your own ink, pens, and blotted paper, but we provide this table and chair. Will you be ready by tomorrow? Certainly, I answered. Well then, goodbye, Mr. James Wilson, and let me congratulate you once more on the important position which you have been fortunate enough to gain. He bowed me out of the room, and went home with my assistant, hardly knowing what to say or do. I was so pleased at my good fortune. Well, I thought over the matter all day, and by evening I was in low spirits again, for I had quite persuaded myself that the whole affair must be some great hoax or fraud, though what its object might be I cannot imagine. It seems altogether past belief that anyone could make such a will, or that they would pay such a sum for doing anything as so simple as copying out the Encyclopedia Britannica. Vincent Spaulding did what he could to cheer me up, but by bedtime I had reasoned myself out of the whole thing. However, in the morning I determined to have a look at it anyhow, so I brought a penny bottle of ink, and with a quill pen and 7 sheets of foolscap paper, I started off for Pope's Court. Well, to my surprise and delight, everything was as right as possible. The table was set out for me, and Mr. Duncan Ross was there to see that I got fairly to work. He started me off upon the letter A, and then he left me. But he would drop in from time to time to see that all was right with me. At 2 o'clock he bade me good day, complimented me on the amount that I had written, and locked the door of the office after me. This went on day after day, Mr. Holmes, and on Saturday the manager came in and planked down 4 gold sovereigns for my week's work. It was the same next week, and the same the week after. Every morning I was there at 10, and every afternoon I left by 2. By degrees, Mr. Duncan Ross took to coming only once of a morning, and then, after time, he did not come in at all. Still, of course, I never dared leave the room for an instant, for I was not sure when he might come, and the billet was such a good one, and suited me so well that I would not risk the loss of it. 8 weeks passed away like this, and I had written about abbots and archery and armour and architecture and Attica, and hoped with diligence that I might get onto the bees before very long. It cost me something in footscalp, but I had pretty nearly filled a shelf with my writings, and then suddenly the whole business came to an end. To an end? Yes, sir. You're off to bed. Night-night. Night-night, right, candy guy. So it's almost 3:25. How much of the book is left? I have no idea. I have no idea how much of the short story is left. We'll keep reading and find out. To an end, yes, sir. And no later than this morning. I went to my work as usual at 10 o'clock, but the door was shut and locked, with a little square of cardboard hammered on the middle of the panel tacked. Here it is, you can read for yourself. He held up a piece of white cardboard about the size of a sheet of notepaper. It read in this fashion: The Redhead League is dissolved, October 9th, 1890. Sherlock Holmes and I surveyed this curt announcement, and the rueful face behind it, until the comical side of the affair so completely overtopped every other conclusion that we burst out into a roar of laughter. I cannot see if there is anything funny, cried our client, flushing up to the roots of his flaming hair. If you can do nothing better than laugh at me, I can go elsewhere. No, no, cried Holmes, shoving him back into the chair from which he had half risen. I really wouldn't miss your case for the world. It is the most refreshingly unusual, but there is, if you will excuse me from saying so, something just a little funny about it. Pray, what steps did you take when you found the card upon the door? Hello, Noko-tan. I'm glad you're still here. I was staggered, sir. I did not know what to do. Then I called the officers around, but none of them seemed to know anything about it. Finally, I went to the landlord, who is an accountant living on the ground floor. I asked him if he could tell me more of what had become of the Redhead League. He said that he'd never heard of such a body. Then I asked him who was Mr. Duncan Ross. He answered the name was new to him. Well, I said, the gentleman at number 4. What, the red-headed man? Yes. Oh, he said, his name was William Morris. He was a solicitor, and was using my room as a temporary convenience until his new premise was ready. He moved out yesterday. Where could I find him? Oh, his new offices. He did tell me the address. Yes, 17 King Edward Street near St. Paul's. I started off, Mr. Holmes, but when I got to that address, it was a manufactory of artificial kneecaps, and no one in it had ever heard of either Mr. William Morris or Mr. Duncan Ross. And what did you do then? Asked Holmes. I went home to Saxe Coburn Square, and I took the advice of my assistant, but he could not help me in any way. He could only say that if I waited, I should hear by post. But that was not quite good enough, Mr. Holmes. I did not wish to lose such a place without a struggle. So, as I heard you were good enough to give advice to poor folk who were in need of it, I came right away. And you did very wisely, said Holmes. Your case is exceedingly remarkable one, and I shall be happy to look into it. From what you have told me, I think that it is possible that graver issues hang from it that might appear at first sight. Grave enough? Said Mr. James Wilson. Why, I have lost £4 a week. As far as you are personally concerned, remarked Holmes, I do not see that you have any grievance against this extraordinary league. On the contrary, you are, if I understand, richer by some £30, to say nothing of the minute knowledge that you have gained on every subject that comes under the letter A. You have lost nothing by them. No, sir, but I want to find out about them, and who they are, and what their object was in playing this prank, if it was a prank, upon me. It was a pretty expensive joke for them, for it to cost £30 and £30. I need to hydrate. We shall endeavour to clear up these points for you. And first, 1 or 2 questions, Mr. Wilson. This assistant of yours, who first called your attention to the advertisement, how long had he been with you? About 1 month, then. How did he come? In answer to an advertisement. Was he the only applicant? No, I had a dozen. Why did you pick him? Because he was handy and would come cheap. At half wages, in fact. Yes. What is he like, this Vincent Spaulding? Small, stout build, very quick in his ways, no hair on his face, though he's short of 30, has a white splash of acid upon his forehead. Holmes sat up in his chair in a considerable excitement. I thought as much. Said he, have you ever observed that his ears are pierced for earrings? Yes, sir. He told me that a gypsy had done it for him when he was a lad. Said Holmes, sinking back in deep thought. Is he still with you? Yes, sir. I have only just left him. And has your business been attended to in your absence? Nothing to complain of, sir. There's never very much to do in the mornings. That will do. Mr. Wilson, I shall be happy to give you an opinion on the subject in the course of a day or 2. Today is Saturday, and I hope that by Monday we may have come to a conclusion. Well, Watson, said Holmes, when our visitor had left us, what do you make of it all? I am going to have a quick one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. There's a lot, and we're 10 minutes past the end of the stream. Today is Sunday. Today is, in fact, Sunday. Where are we up to? As a rule. Yeah, I knew it was going to happen, to be honest. There was no way we were going to finish it, I'm not going to lie. Trying to find half wages, in fact. Yeah, so that's the page we're on. We might continue it next stream, or I might have found another book by then. We will find out. Future Brownie will know. Current Brownie does not. And I do not know the future, nor can I infer it from very strange details in people's dress, like Sherlock can. Alright, see you again whenever my schedule isn't picking on me. Bye-bye, night-night. Very much so. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, everyone in chat. Thank you, everyone who lurked. And thank you to everyone who watches the VOD. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the stream, I would also appreciate it if you could leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you are on YouTube. But if you are on Twitch, I'd also appreciate it if you could follow this channel. That would be lovely. Thank you very much. And if you have some money burning in your pockets and you don't know what to do with it, then there's plenty of ways you could give it to your favorite British Vtuber. Yeah! You could give it to me via memberships, and in memberships you can get emotes, exclusive streams, the Discord channel, and merch discounts. You could give it to me via Patreon, where you can get short stories, exclusive streams, merch discounts, and free books. Make sure to eat oranges. Gets rid of cold quickly. Problem is, I don't like oranges. I don't mind orange juice. We could do a lot of orange juice. There's the Kofi, which has a small shop with me recording some short stories, so you can have a look there. There's also the merch store, which has ebooks. First edition copies of books that I have written, and it is the only place you can get those first edition copies. There are bookmarks, earrings, t-shirts, notebooks, a very soft pillow with my chibi on, and a sticker roulette, where you can get stickers of my emotes, but you don't know which ones you're going to get. It's a gacha. You're going to have fun with it. Yeah! So check out all those links in the description, and that is all I have for you. I will be back tomorrow with something. I'm undecided. It's either going to be Higurashi or Hades. I'm not sure. I wanted it to be Hades, but it was pointed out that it's a bank holiday. My boyfriend's off, and Hades is technically part of his Steam library, so if I play it, then I block him from his Steam library for 2 hours, and that would be mean when he has a day off. So it might be Higurashi instead, just because. So, yeah, I'll see you then. For now, it is goodbye, farewell, don't miss me too much. I had fun. I hope you had fun. This has been Brandy Rose Smith, live from the Forbidden Library. Goodbye. I don't want to bring back the small one.